The educator Dr. Maria Montessori once said,
"The child developing harmoniously and the adult improving himself at his side make a very exciting and attractive picture."
Welcome to Montessori Education with me, Jesse McCarthy, where we talk raising children and educating students while bettering ourselves right alongside them. If you're listening to this podcast, then you have probably heard at some point, or you know well, that it's not really helpful for us as adults to be praising children all the time, especially with generic lines like, "Good job." So on this episode, I'm not actually going to go into a defense of why that is true. If you're looking for something like that, or like real evidence and deep explanation of why that is so, check out an earlier discussion I had with Professor Eddie Brummelman at the University of Amsterdam. The title of that episode is actually Self-Esteem in Children, and I will link to it in the show notes. So today I'm going to be assuming you already know that repeating praise like, that good job, wow, you're beautiful, you are so smart. These things are not helpful for children. They might feel right to us, but they're actually, could be harmful in the long run, particularly making children dependent on our opinion or our views of them, which can lead to other people's views of them. The kind of culture where I'm always looking for that like button, that type of thing. But knowing this theoretically and then following the theory in practice are two very different things. So for instance, I've gotten many questions, and this is from both parents and teachers, that, basically goes something like, okay, I get it that I shouldn't say good job, but then what do I say? Right? It's not easy. So today I'm going to answer that through a few real world examples and talk a little about each. Now, the first two are between parent and child, and the last is between a teacher and a child, but they'll all apply to all adults and children, regardless of, if you're a parent or a teacher or a caregiver or whatever you call yourself. So starting with a parent example, let's say you pick up your daughter from preschool, and when she gets in the car, she says, "Look at what I did." And she's holding up a drawing, let's say, of a flower. So what do? Well, of course, we're here. There's no good job. All right. And that's going to be hard, but no good job. So instead of that, or something like, "Oh, that's wonderful," you might say, "Oh, that flower is so colorful. I really like the green you chose, especially because it looks so dark next to those bright pink petals." And just stop. Now, your daughter might then say something about the drawing, and you two get into a little talk about it. Who knows? And with this simple approach, you're doing a few things. So one, you're showing your daughter that you're interested in the things she does, and not superficially, but, specifically. And I should note, you're actually trying to find something that you appreciate. So doing this without genuineness can backfire. Kids pick up on BS just like we do. So, you don't want to go, "Oh, that color's just so vibrant." Just keep it real is what I'm saying. Now, second thing that you're doing with your daughter here is you're helping her to look closer at the work she does. Or more broadly, you're guiding her to be more aware of her actions, what she's creating. She probably just drew that flower without much thought, right? I'm saying she's a preschooler here. But you're helping her to notice that she can put thought into her actions, right? So you're doing this implicitly, of course. This is not like some intellectual dialogue you're having with your daughter. She's just getting that through what you're saying. And then you should have a quick note that I've said this on the podcast a bunch, but you don't want to turn these type of things into a lesson or a lecture. So nothing like, "By the way, Jenny, did you know that flowers grow because of water in the sun? And that, that outer part you drew, that's a stamen. Oh, and pollination is when," just stop. Unless she's asking you a question, to get further information, then don't get into all sorts of, this isn't a time to teach her some deep lesson about flowers or whatever it is she drew. Okay, here's another parent example. So we got that one with the flower. Let's say you have a son, maybe 8 or 9 years old. You attend his first soccer match. They win. He's excited. You're excited for him. Everyone's excited, pumped. Right after the game, he runs up to you beaming. What do? So instead of, "Wow, you are so good at soccer," you can say something like, "Wow, I'm impressed. First, how do you last so long out there on the field going back and forth without taking a break? I mean, seriously, how do you keep up your stamina out there? Okay, so your son might start talking about his team's practices and maybe how much running they do during them. Or maybe he won't know what the word stamina means, and so he'll ask you. Or maybe he'll be like, I'll show you over the weekend. Let's go to that one park with a soccer field and play. Whatever he says, though, it will be better than getting empty praise from you about what a good job he did out there. I mean, surely he's getting that from all sorts of random parents and teachers and so forth. Like, let's be unique here and aid your child. Now, again, this is because you don't really want him seeking your approval in the future, but really rather your genuine relationship and possibly the insights you can offer through just dialogue. It's kind of funny. I'm thinking about this. Like we were just in New York last week on vacation. And I think this good job is actually difficult. Not saying good job is difficult with us adults too. Like when we're talking to each other. So we were on this tour in Chinatown, this food tour, and it was so awesome. It was such a great trip. And this guy was just such a sweet guy, really knowledgeable about Chinatown and the food around there. He was the chef. And afterwards, I wanted to write him a review. It was through I think Airbnb events or whatever they call them. And I found myself, I was writing the review and I just was going to say oh, it was a really great tour, amazing food. And I was like, wow, this is the same as the good job. It's kind of just empty praise. Is there any way I can give, more detail or more specific? So anyways, I'm mentioning this because I think coming up with meaningful things to say to any human being is not always easy. So this is not just about children, right? Okay, but back to kids. So this time I want to give an example at school. Let's say you're a toddler teacher, again, or guide, caretaker, whatever you want to call yourself. You're watching a few children in the sandbox. A boy calls out to you and points out a sandcastle he just made. And he says, I did it. What do you do? Okay, so instead of, wow, a sandcastle, what a great job. And I don't know about you, but I've said that before for sure. Instead of that, we're going to go to, let me take a better look at that. Maybe you scoot a little closer to the sandcastle. You used a lot of sand to build this. It looks so big. I think it might be almost half as tall as you are. And you might, I'm here raising my hand a little to compare heights while I'm talking here. So you might do that. Then you could maybe end with something like, I appreciate you showing me your sandcastle. That's it. Just stop. I think in this case, I've done this so many times over the years now, now I'm not doing this good job. You'll probably get a smile or maybe a nod, but notice here that you're implicitly letting this child know that you care enough about him and his work to really look at what he does and take the time to comment on it. So you're not filling him with, what I might call second-handed self-esteem. My teacher thinks my work is great, that type of thing. But rather you're helping him to build up the tools that will later lead to his inner worth, strong sense of self. I can build big things. So again, it's not attached to you. It's attached to him and whatever he's creating. And I always want to emphasize that this is long range inner work going on. Of course, no toddler or preschooler again is going home and journaling his emotions, So this is kind of subconscious work that's going on in this early ages, at least. All right. So overall, the examples I've shared today are part of a basic approach. I'm just going to call them purposeful guidance at this point. I don't really have a term that's going to be in contrast to the good job approach or the praise approach. And what we're doing with this is we're guiding children. We're almost always doing that, but what we're going to try to be doing here is to do it more deliberately and more purposefully. So emphasizing that you want to be intentional or purposeful in how you communicate with your child or with children. And this is, again, versus just throwing around that whatever comes to mind, empty, good job type praise. And one thing I like about this approach is it requires us adults to actually look closely at what children show us or at what they do, instead of our immediately jumping to say something. And that can be hard because it's so easy. I just want to say something. Good job. You're great. It's this immediate thing. But when we start to practice this, actually inner questions come up like, what is it that this child, or my child is actually showing me? So take a good look, find something about it you can purposefully comment on. Maybe that the child can then even look at herself and possibly think about or comment on too. But what she does not need is empty judgment and praise. And it's actually fascinating that most of us nowadays, when we turn this around, would never, ever just throw out empty criticism, or at least hopefully we would. Something like, wow, that drawing really sucks, or your kids playing the soccer game. You call that playing soccer? I mean, you look like a little baby out there. We would never, ever do these kind of extreme, you're horrible type things. But we do the opposite all the time. Wow, that drawing is beautiful. Or, you are an amazing soccer player. We do it all the time. It's wild. In the end, whether it's positive or negative, such comments rarely aid children. But when we start to do differently, when we kind of move away from the empty judgment, of course, this action, what we're changing, it can be difficult to do. I mean, when I first really started trying this non-praise style, it was kind of wild, as the emotional feeling I had was something like, but this isn't enough. I have to add in something like, a good job every here and there, or wow, that's great, or, something. And that was the feeling I had so early on when I was, learning about this approach. But what's wild is we actually don't need to do this. It's coming from us. It's not the child's need for all of this praise. So I think it's just that it's become so normalized to praise and praise and praise children, versus the old school style of being hypercritical of children, which is also bad, that it's really hard to even for us to see outside of this crazy praise box that we're in, particularly as a culture. But when you start to use this new kind of purposeful guidance, you see that children, they actually enjoy it more. And I think this is partly because it leads to more sincere dialogue between us and children, which ultimately is what they really want. I mean, meaningful connection and helpful guidance from us. And that's whether you're a parent, a teacher, caregiver, grandparent, whatever. Children, they just want to build genuine relationship and really to be a little bit more grown up and wise like us, at least in their young eyes when they're looking up to us. Okay, hopefully that gives some practical aid there. And related, I'd like to actually thank a mother named Suzanne for writing in about this question. An email she sent me on the topic really finally got me moving on just getting something out here. Again, note that there is a full episode on self-esteem that delves much deeper into, why good job isn't so good. You can find that at montessorieducation.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. That is all for today. If you enjoyed this episode or the others, please subscribe to the show and maybe leave a review. All right, take care, everyone, and adios for now.